And apparently we are live.
You speak for yourself, mate. Oh, and another Tuesday romp. Here we go.
Tuesday romp with a real rock and roller. Rock star and producer and label head and philanthropist. So we are absolutely thrilled today to have our guest, David Resnik. He's the powerhouse behind a lot of scenes going on in the entertainment world and have been going on for a while. He's the co-founder of Cinema Music Group with our good friend Niko Bolas. He's a composer whose work has shaped campaigns for ABC, CBS, Bravo, and many more. He's played and produced alongside legends like MAVIS Staples, Donna Summer, and Ricky Martin, and has even helped launch the career of Josh Homme with KYUSS and later Queens of the Stone Age during his A&R days. So he's worn many hats. But today we start with something close to his heart. It's called Heart of Gold, The Songs of Neil Young, Volume 1. And it's a brand new tribute album featuring many, many wonderful artists, all of our favorites. And it's benefiting the wonderful Bridge School, the work that they do, which supports children with speech and physical impairments through tech innovations, creativity, and community. So let's dive in and welcome David Resnik. Hi, David.
Hi, David.
Good morning. Good morning to you both and to everyone.
Thank you.
Good morning. Absolutely. Thanks so much for taking the time. I know how busy you must be with this brand new release just come out and the wonderful launch party you had at Jeff and Tina's Village.
Yes, that was great, right? I'm glad you were there.
Yes, absolutely. Wouldn't have missed it for the world. So the latest project, Heart of Gold, it features, I'm going to tell the kids, Brandi Carlile singing Philadelphia, Fiona Apple sings Heart of Gold, Mumford & Sons, Eddie Vedder, Stephen Marley, Sharon Van Etten, the Doobie Brothers with Alison Russell, Steve Earle, Rodney Crowell, and your own label mate, Chris Pierce. So how did this first come about?
Well, as you may or may not know, Niko has worked with Neil for almost 40 years now. And we started our business a few years ago, but in early 2023, he just called me one afternoon and said, hey, Neil's going to give us the blessing to cover his songs.
Cool.
And we thought, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. But how do we really make the most of that multi-level? So we kind of came up with the plan. You know, if you just called Brandi Carlile and said, will you cover a Neil song for whatever, it might be a little harder. Yeah. But the Bridge School is such a wonderful institution that it became quite easy to reach every artist that we had, because some of them had played the concerts, which lasted almost 30 years till 2017.
That's right.
And all of them are Neil fans.
Right.
And
also when you have people like Niko Bolas' name attached and the Grammy winning Ross Hogarth, who, you know, he's got a Rolodex. Once word starts to spread through people like that, I'm sure your phone was ringing, people want in, right?
It was very easy to get to artists. We did not go through the front door management attorney. We just called, you know, Ross would call Rodney Crowell directly, Stephen Marley's manager, John Phillips. But everyone, once they knew what the goal was,
right,
they were on board.
Yeah.
Great. Wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, I know there are a lot of Neil fans out there, but I'm not sure how many of them know of his family, you know, and children situation and all the work that he has done over the years, just behind the scenes. It's not Neil Young's Bridge School. You know, he just wants to help humanity. God bless him.
Well, his late wife, Peggy, was instrumental in founding the school.
Right.
Because their son, Ben, is nonverbal.
Right.
And they didn't really have a place to educate him. And so Neil then became involved, bringing in his, you know, tons of friends to do the live shows. And the live shows were very, very instrumental in building a, you know, a financial base that still carries on today.
Great.
Right.
Very strong endowment.
Yeah.
But our feeling was it had kind of fallen out of the mainstream of discussion. Yes.
Well, and COVID, there were no live shows, right? I think the last one.
There was that. It stopped. Peggy and he divorced, and then she passed away.
Right.
And the concerts were put on pause. They may or may not start again. We're hoping this might be a catalyst.
Hopefully.
Shows going again on some level. But it was really easy to get people to get involved, and every artist had their own idea of what they wanted to do almost immediately.
Oh, okay.
That's what I was going to ask you. How did you go about choosing the songs, and where did it? So they came to you with their own ideas, did they?
Well, let's use Brandy Carlisle for an example. We reached out to Brandy through our musical director, Dave Palmer. And Palmer just called her up, and she was immediately on board and said, I want to do the song Philadelphia because that's important to me.
Oh,
okay, well,
I see.
It's yours. Stephen Marley, I don't know if Stephen was really aware of Old Man. That was Ross Hogarth kind of saying, hey, Stephen, go check this tune out. You're going to find it connects to your heart.
Yeah.
Rodney Crowell, immediately, I want to do Mr. Soul. Okay.
Okay.
So we would go down the line, and it was kind of a first come, first serve.
Yes.
Right. Interesting. Was there a particular track or a version and an output that surprised you in any way?
They all surprised me on some level, how working with Sharon Van Etten. So the first session that Niko and I produced, we did 3 artists in a day. We did Chris in the morning, the Chris Pierce Southern Man. We did Sharon Van Etten, and then in the afternoon, we did an artist from Volume 2, a dear friend of mine, Draco Rosa from Puerto Rico. Sharon came in, and I was tangentially aware, there's so much great stuff out there living in their own ecosystems that I don't always, as a boomer, know everybody. So I really didn't know this young lady. However, she came in, and it was so cute. She said, my dad used to play this when we would drive around New Jersey.
Wow.
And I want to do this tune. Here we are in the years. Now, that's not only a deep cut,
right?
It's not an easy track of music. And
right.
She came in and
nailed
made
it.
Her own. Everyone.
Yeah.
Everybody.
It's Neil's music is so it's like reading a history book, right? He's truly a historian, not just a storyteller, but his social commentary and his care for, like I said before, humanity. I think that I'm not surprised actually that some artists pick their own songs, and then people like Ross would turn younger artists onto older songs. But that's another benefit out of the beauty of something like this, is that there's just so much material to choose from, and you've got legacy artists, and you're also giving newer artists a chance to shine on a stage with big names, right?
Well, what you get with Neil, Ruth, is that his work is so heartfelt and real.
Yeah.
That the younger generation has found it on their own on some level. The legacy acts like Los Lobos, when they came to do Cinnamon Girl, that's on Volume 2.
Right.
Their comment to us was, we've been playing this since high school, so we know how to play this tune. And they kind of went in and did what would probably more closely resemble a cover. And those people turned them inside out. But, the 50-year legacy of brilliant work has really seeped through the cracks. And I was very impressed with Courtney Barnett, this really brilliant young Australian woman, lot of love. She wanted to do not the one that maybe we're more aware of, the Nicolette Larson version, but she wanted to do something that resembled Neil's version. She came in with her girlfriend, Stella, who is the drummer.
Yep. Oh, did I lose you? Whoopsie. We'll keep talking. Do we have an internet whoopsie?
Oh, there it happens. We're back.
We're back. Oh, good. There we go. So she came in with Stella, the drummer.
Yes, and Stella played on Southern Man. She played on
great
our Edie Brickell track. She played on Draco's track. She's kind of our house drummer.
Great, love
but
that.
They knew what they wanted to do. Almost everything.
That's great.
Well, and the win-win-win with this project, Volume 1 and 2, and heaven knows there may be a 3 if it's if it goes roaring out of the gate. Not only is it showcasing the work and the history of Neil Young, the greatness of Neil Young, it's putting newer artists alongside legacy artists to get their name out there, and win-win-win, it's benefiting the Bridge School. So what has been the, I bet they couldn't believe it, what's been the feedback from the school and the families and the wider Bridge community?
Well, the school has been incredible, and obviously they are very appreciative that we've helped re-elevate their profile.
Yes.
And Niko has mixed most of the shows over the years, so he knew a couple people from the board, and he knew the heads of the school and put us in touch early on. And they've been, and then we went, when we structured our deal, we were able to put a deal together where we could bring the school $100,000 out of the gate. And that was with this really wonderful new company called Killphonic Rights. So in December, Niko, myself, our artist Chris Pierce, and Caleb from Killphonic, we went to the school. And we made one of those big lottery checks, and we went up there. But we went to the school, and it was incredibly moving and life-changing for all of us. Where we really knew what we'd done was a really good thing.
And where the money's going, that's the problem with these huge national and international charities. They're doing yeoman's work, but there's so many administrative layers. You give somebody $100, they wind up getting $3.68 because of all of the hands it has to pass through.
We knew that Vicky Casella, the head of the school, was going to invest every penny. And the board and Neil's team, Frank Gironda, remains on the board. So they spend very wisely.
Yeah.
It is not cheap because each individual chair with a computer on it is it's like a little spaceship.
Oh, yeah.
It is, but meeting the young people and the frontline young people, I have to call out the actual teachers. They were usually, let's say, late 20s. In their,
oh no, not again. I hope it's not me.
We're back.
Yep.
I hope that's not my internet.
I don't know. I'm not getting any bad signals. It's Spectrum's having a headache. Sorry. So the teacher.
Oh dear.
This is just driving me crazy.
Okay, I can hear you both.
Okay, good. So keep going. So it is actually National Teacher Appreciation Week, by the way. So good to be talking about teachers.
Yeah.
The teachers were the heroes of the whole thing, and obviously the administrators are facilitating all of it to happen. They have a great team. They have a great team. We were so impressed. There was one young girl named Ariana. She was maybe 9 years old, from Mexico, and she kind of just took a liking to me and started asking me questions. When we first came in, we were watching them working. What the school requests you to do is to sit down with the kids so that everybody's on the same level, so that you're not sort of towering over them. And this Ariana starts asking me questions. How old are you? I'm old.
Very.
What's your birthday? June 18th.
Yeah.
What do you speak Spanish? And my response was, yo hablo un poquito español.
Yeah.
And then we were buddies. And it was just, to see the kids that would be struggling on the sidelines of life.
Yeah.
Being right in the game. Wow.
Yeah.
And she was adorable when Chris started playing. So we ended up doing a little showcase. There's a school next door, and we brought a bunch of kids together, and Chris Pierce played a little acoustic set.
Oh, nice.
And Ariana just kept hitting her. That's awesome. That's awesome, to the point of where her teacher was going, we know.
Enough for it.
Her enthusiasm, she was just all the reasons why this was a great thing.
Yeah.
And another young man whose name, it was not Clay, but name escapes me. He rolled up to me and he handed me a keychain. I probably have it. Here it is. Bridge School.
Oh, yeah.
The back, it says, everyone deserves a voice.
Oh.
That almost sent me into I get a little choked up.
Sure.
Remembering it.
Oh, sweet.
And the capper of all this, when we were putting the record together at one point, as we were designing the inner cover of the physical album, our well-meaning graphic designer put a picture that he found on the internet of Neil. And Niko texts the group and says, don't do that. It's not about Neil. This is about the school.
Oh,
we were like, oh, okay, hang on. So I called the head of the school, Vicky. Vicky, is there any artwork from any of the young people that we could use?
Yeah, great idea.
Yeah.
Well, she sent us an artwork from this kid, Clay Holquist, and it was fabulous. I encourage everyone that might be listening to go to the Killphonic Rights website, and if you have a record player, order the record.
Yep.
Because the inner sleeve is Clay's artwork, and
Classic.
it was so cool, and it so much solved the problem. Neil has been very supportive across.
Oh, yeah.
However,
I mean, he even drove down to LA for the launch party.
And he didn't need to do that after rehearsal in Ventura.
No, that's right. And he's going around the world very shortly. So he definitely is an angel for that.
But Niko is his friend. And he knew that, this is about Neil's body of work and the school, and it's not a Neil Young record. So let's rethink this. And it worked out great. It worked out fabulous.
Wonderful. I bet you can't wait to get to volume 2. What have you got a release date schedule for that?
Well, what we're looking at is we're going to have a kind of brainstorm meeting. We have an embarrassment of riches. We have another 20 tracks in the can.
God.
In the can, from Ann Wilson, from Hard, from Los Lobos, Edie Brickell, Devendra Banhart. And we're thinking that maybe we'll end up doing, instead of 3 volumes, just a 20-volume, 2-vinyl volume 2.
Vinyl? Yeah. Or if you did it 3, you could do 1 each year, and then submit it for all kinds of things, and keep, like the Bridge School did a concert every year. You could do an album every year. You could probably actually keep that going.
Ruth, we're going to default. Our distributor and Caleb Shreve's team has been so responsive and great that Niko and Johnny and I will do what they recommend.
Right. Yeah, they know what they're doing. No, I'm just coming from my marketing, award season hat. They're going,
well, your dear friend Carrie suggested, if you release it in January, you can get some overlapping press with your Grammy press.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Well, who knows? But, Killphonic are the experts. I'm not going to try and self-diagnose here. And had a question about Killphonic.
Yeah. So, my thought was, what drew you to partner with them in the first place?
How did you meet them? How did you know them? Yeah. Did they find you?
Well, we went and we took the record to all the major companies.
Okay.
And they all passed.
What?
They're not, the unfortunate state of the music business is that if it's a charity project, that requires them to take a nominal distribution fee and contribute the rest to an outside entity, we couldn't get any traction. And we certainly couldn't get the kind of advance. We have a young man that works for us from London, a wonderful young man, Johnny Ashby. And when we brought Johnny on last February, he knew these guys. They had seen, they had done some work together. Killphonic started out as like a publishing company that would, let's say you have some missing money.
Okay.
It really, a great deal is where both parties win.
Right. So they were like royalty detectives in
that was where they started, Ruth, but they wanted to sort of expand into a competitive, independent entity.
Oh,
and what we brought to them was, here's a product with a lot of legacy artists, a lot of artists that have their own, are to go back to Courtney Barnett. Well, I didn't know a ton about her. If you pull up her Spotify, she's got 60, 70 million streams. She's got a lot of people that know a lot about her.
Right.
Just as an example. And of course, the Doobie Brothers and the other legacy acts have their following. Stephen Marley, the same thing.
Well, not to mention the songwriter above all of it, right?
Yeah.
Neil.
So we were able to put a deal together where we recouped a tremendous amount of our investment, but we also, cutting the school a check out of the gate was really important to us. And we couldn't get Warner's or Virgin. We went to them all. I'll call you out. They all just, we had a fairly large scale attorney shopping it for us.
Right.
But these guys showed up. And they needed it, and we needed them. And they just turned out to be, Caleb has put together a wonderful, we think the world of him and his leadership ability because of the team he put together.
Great. That's fantastic.
So that's how we ended up with them.
Well, it sounds like a marriage made in heaven, actually.
It was serendipity because it was the best choice, and so far, so good. They've done a great job.
I always think about situations like that where, they are a new company. They're changing hats, going from royalty detectives into label and distribution and marketing. And so you are their most important client. They're always going to pick the phone up for you. If you're with one of the major 5 labels, you're one of 500 artists calling to say, where's my royalty statement? And why is this wrong? Why, the bigger the label, I don't care if it says Neil Young or Brandi Carlile, they're still going to ignore you.
Well, that's so true. One of the companies that became an option is, they handle a lot of legacy acts. So we would be competing with
Correct.
Yeah.
Frank Sinatra and Led Zeppelin and the Eagles. And, how do you get through that forest?
Right. Well, and you're just another coat hanging in the cloakroom.
No
but
doubt.
Right. If you have your own valet taking your cloak as you go into the venue, well, now it's a different story, right?
They're a great. We couldn't be happier. They're going to distribute. Niko and I are going in the studio Monday to start a brand new Chris Pierce project.
Oh, great! Love him.
And they're going to distribute that for us. So we have future business with them. We're real happy with the relationship.
That's
wonderful.
fantastic.
Good.
So to get to this point about knowing how much you know about the music industry and the deals and the points and the percentages and what sounds like a good deal and what is definitely not, you've been around the block, right? You've composed. How did you start getting into like sonic branding, or we call them earworms here? My husband Martin, that you met as a musician. How did you get in front of ABC, CBS, Bravo, Sky Sports? Did one lead to another, or did you just have a killer agent? Or
no, fascinating story. My entire life has been an endeavor trying to avoid ever having to get a job.
Likewise.
And I had been working as a A&R executive with a company called Kilonic Records for about 4 years. Okay. And we sold the company back to Elektra, and everybody at my level got buyouts. I had to fire my whole staff. Oh. It was, A&R is a very difficult job because you get 2 submissions a day. Yeah. 10, 15 a day, and you sign 2 a year. So your entire life is no. So when that folded, I didn't really want to do it again. And so I just started calling some friends up, and I had a friend that was a composer for a company called Ad Music. So I started working with him kind of as just a guitar player. But then our dear friends, Cheryl and Dave Palmer. Dave Palmer is our music director, but Cheryl had been my executive assistant at Kilonic. And she went from Kilonic to Paramount, one of the CBS companies. She went to UPN when they had a network in the mid-90s. UPN. And she called me one day and she goes, I'm seeing these music invoices coming across my desk. Can you do this? And I'm like, oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Always say yes.
Always say yes.
I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm lying. And so I call my friend Jim Goodwin. And I'm like, Jimmy, can we do this? And we started out doing, UPN used to have like 3 nights a week, 2 nights of comedy. A lot of it was interesting Black comedies like Moesha. We started writing these little comedy jingles like Back to Back Monday on UPN. And that was, singers loved us because they'd come in and they'd sing for literally that long, and we'd pay them and they'd go out the door. Yeah.
Martin used to work for Ad Music, actually, and Dane Blair and Who Did That Music and all of that. So I'm familiar with that.
Jim Goodwin was one. So he probably knows Pat Weaver. Pat was the young lady that hired my friend. And I was just the guy that would come into Ad Music and play on mostly Jimmy's spots. I don't think I played on any of Dane's spots. However, that led to meeting a company in the late 90s. As you probably remember, there were a ton of there were a ton of new networks coming online.
Right.
There was a company called Pittard Sullivan that we got involved with, and they we would just call we're constantly kind of hustling. Yeah. So we ended up doing a spot for Pittard Sullivan in maybe 97, which was Sky Football.
Okay.
Simple. Ba-da-da-da, diggy-diggy-diggy. So it was really stupid stuff. But
it's harder to do than you think, though, because you're given a very small amount of time and you're supposed to create emotion. It's not that easy.
The ABC was the most interesting because they still use it. We did it in 98. I still see some royalties coming in on my BM statement. They came to us and they said, we want something that kind of between Satisfaction and the Intel. Yeah, exactly. So we kind of started scratching our heads. I was sitting at home one day and I had the light bulb, and I called my buddy Jim and I said, Jimmy, we're going to win this. Yep. And what I had come up with was a 3-pronged, simple mnemonic. For the evening shows, I would do something that was ba 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 ba, very dominant and
yes, I remember that.
And then for the daytime shows, we did major, gang, very happy for your date stuff. But
so one major, one minor?
Yes. Well, but the way we won the job was a conference call with a guy named Mike Benson and my whole team. I pitched those two and they said, and I've got one more and you're going to love this. We can do it with no notes. We can do just drums going. And I banged on the table. And my client looked at me like, you're fucking crazy. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. You're out of your freaking.
But the head guy got that grin on his face like, oh my, we just
beat Intel at their own game.
And the guy was like, he was driving down the West Side Highway or something. He said, oh, that's cool. And we won it. We won the gig. And we probably between 98 and 2001 did 300
good God
3 to 5 second bits of music.
Wow.
And so we were able to make money, cash and carry from the creation.
Yeah.
And then we also were the songwriters on it, which allows us to continue to. They don't use it as much.
I'm very familiar with it, though.
The one that they use a lot still is, and I don't hear it, but I see it on my statement, is Good Morning America. I love Good Morning America because I'm getting paid as we speak. I don't watch it, but so that was, the long story to answer your short question is we just stumbled.
You fell into it. I know it's like when Martin is, as you probably know, he's a German, and so he has like 3.5, 4 octaves and a raspy rock voice, and so he fell right in with Dane Blair and all those guys. And once Dane reached back to Germany and said, "Hey, I've put together Kevin Littau. I speak German, I sing in German, and Martin." And then Gene Morsford would, put the choir and everything together. So he reached out, and all of the German broadcasters wanted to come to Hollywood, to come to LA, bring their wives to Santa Monica. And so we worked for years doing only German jobs right there in Westwood because they all wanted to visit Hollywood.
Of course.
So, when you fall into something, it's just like, just ride that train as long as it's on the tracks.
Well, and I'm sure Martin would tell, when I moved here to attend the Musicians Institute, you don't wake up one day and think, I'm going to write a 4-note bit that's going to make me a bunch of money. Right. You want to join the Eagles, you want to be Joe Walsh, you want to be something else.
When I was living in Munich, I was signed to the Big Mean Germans for a hot minute as an artist, and Martin was Harold Faltermeyer's demo singer. So Harold would get Top Gun and Fletch and Fletch Lives, and Martin would go in and sing all the songs to present to Kenny Loggins. So he sang Danger Zone first, and then Kenny Loggins heard it, and all of that stuff. So Harold needed an English lyricist. So I wrote a couple of things with him. Well, the phone goes in Munich at 11:30 one night, and he says, "Hi, Ruth, it's Hacky. Do you have a fax machine?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Can I play you something down the phone? And will you send me some lyrics inside half an hour?" I'm like, well, it don't come FedEx, but all right. So he said, "It needs to be about humanity, and I don't tell you what it's for, but it needs to be about the world coming together." So I'm like, all right. So I've got my crappy little cassette player. It's like 1989, I think. Got my cassette player, and I've got the phone to it because we didn't have a speakerphone. So I record it. I'm like, I'll fax you something in half an hour. So I go crack a scotch and Coca-Cola, and off I go. And I'm sitting there, and I just scribbled something out. And I'm like, well, here's my first try. And he's like, brilliant, we take it. It's for the ARD, ZDF, German Television Network. It's the theme for the Barcelona Olympics. I made 40 grand.
Well, you
just never know.
Great thing, and I bet you and Martin would agree completely, is that what you learn in that business is that you can do it, and you can do it in an hour.
Mm-hmm.
You don't. We used to get jobs that would be UPN would call in the morning, and we would need to, because this was the 90s, we would need to put a DAT on the back of a motorcycle and send it to the West Side.
That's right.
I know.
But if there's money, if there's a reason, creativity is
just
better. If you thought too much about those lyrics, you might.
No, it was called Forever Human. It wasn't one of the greatest lyrics I ever wrote, but it played over and over and over and over again during the Barcelona Olympics and then the Special Olympics thereafter. And the German networks pay royalties like crazy people, and now they're doing 35-year retrospectives, and I'm like, wait a second, Gamer said BMI. I just made $112. What the hell? Oh, and there it is again.
We'll take it all, as it rolls through the door.
I'll take it in Bitcoin if they give it to me.
And all the artists that you named in my discography, most of them were happy accidents where I was working with somebody and I met somebody else, and the next thing you know, you're doing this.
Yep.
And you're doing this. So it was, completely shotgun, haphazard, but quite rewarding in the long run.
Yeah.
Right. So we were just saying at the top, you've worked with an incredible range, Mavis Staples. Ricky Martin fascinates me, Donna Summer, and ROBI DRACO. So
what
have been some of your most memorable moments?
Well, okay, let's go to Ricky. Yeah. So my friend, ROBI DRACO ROSA, it was a Menudo veteran.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't realize that.
And in the early 90s, he went to England and worked with Phil Manzanera from Roxy Music.
Sure, loved Roxy.
Well, Phil, being fluent Spanish with a Colombian mom, was producing a lot of Latin acts. So my friend went and made a record called Vagabundo, which to this day is one of the seminal rock en español records of all times. And it's really brilliant. And when he came to me in 95-ish and he played it for me, he concurrently said, my manager, Angelo Medina, wants me to write for my buddy Rick. Okay. And at the time, Ricky was in like a General Hospital as a soap opera.
Well, tangentially, the connection. My first husband was the music director and is a good friend of Ricky Martin's to this day.
Well, so that Draco dates to those days. So my comment to him was, as we were sitting in my little studio listening to his record, I said, your wife's in the house with your baby. And you might want to, what do you got to lose? So I didn't see him for a couple years. And he drove up to my house one day in a BMW. I'm like,
what the hell happened?
He said, well, Ricky gave it to me. I'm like, he did? Okay, so I guess that's going great. He said, yeah, we have a hit everywhere but here.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Then Vida Loca came out, and the first time I heard it was on hold at the Guitar Center. And I'm listening to it, and I'm going, so I hang up, this is landlines. I hang up and I call Rob, he was still going by Rob at that time. I said, dude, did you write that? And he goes, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, I guess the college fund is taken care of. He said, yeah, come up and see the new house. Wow. So obviously that was giant. So about a year later, Jim Goodwin and I are in the middle of our ABC run. And that's kind of our bread and butter, making little 3-5 seconds bits for ABC. And Draco calls one day, he goes, hey, Dave, do you remember that song we started a couple years ago, Come to Me? Do you remember it? Do you still have the I think it was on a Fostex tape. Do you still have it? And I'm like, yeah, I do. He said, well, if you can finish it today.
Here we go again, deadlines.
I can get Ricky to record it. I'm like, you can? We're like, okay, let's drop everything. Let's just tell ABC that Jim called in sick. And we went about finishing it. There was no digital delivery then. So we burned a CD and I had to take it to like an air freight place and send it to Ricky's house in Miami somewhere.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
We sent it down there, and within a week, this wonderful producer that works with Emilio Esteban and Gloria, the Cuban.
Yeah, sure, love them. Love them.
Yeah, George Noriega had produced it, and it was done. It was on the record, and it was
wow.
It was.
Yeah, last minute moments. I remember when you had to literally drive to LAX or the airport or whatever and go air to air freight courier. You literally have to go to the courier thing, and they would walk it up the gangplank and onto the plane, and then somebody else would pick it up at the other end. And we'd be doing this with cassettes across the world. I mean,
yes. Do you remember a company called PD Rabbit?
No.
Well, they were just God knows what they do now, but their business was running things all over town.
Yeah.
3/4-inch videos.
I remember Mercury couriers we used to use in London.
Yes, very similar business. We just used the PD Rabbit because what we did for Ricky's thing is PD Rabbit took it to the place down by the airport, put it on the plane, and that's how we got it into the loop.
So I guess there was no cloud back in those days.
There was no cloud. If there was a cloud, it was going to rain.
That's right. Well, we're British. We don't shrink. It's all right. We're used to the rain. That's amazing. So again, here's another tangential connection, of course, through you worked with Donna Summer, and she had her, the very beginning start of her career in Germany with Harold Faltermeyer and Frank Farian and all those guys. I used to sing English demos for them as well. And it really is a small world at a certain point, isn't it?
Well, that one is a really super interesting story. In 1991, I was in Chicago, and I was driving my boss's car, which had a car phone. And at the time, I was like, let's call somebody. So I was with one of the guys that was you could call him an inventor of house music. His name is Vince Lawrence. And Vince and I were just hanging out in Chicago on a Wednesday night. I said, let's call my buddy Keith Diamond. And Keith was a producer that I knew socially and had worked with. And Keith was producing Donna Summer. And so we just called Keith up. He was at the studio in New York City, and we just started chatting away. And I'm like, oh, Keith, I'm with Vince Lawrence. He's one of the founder, he's one of the guys who created house music. And Keith, in his West Indies British accent, I need a house track. I'm like, and then Vince pops up because we can get you one tonight. Like, we can.
Well, we
went back and wrote it and sent him a FedEx.
Wow. And I mean, back in those days with a Lindrum and enough weed, you could pretty much do anything, right?
Well, those guys used the Akai. You remember the Akai?
Oh, the Akai?
That was kind of their instrument. Boom, boom, boom. Really
oh, that's right. The boof, boof, as opposed to the plink, plink.
There was no guitar, but hey,
Oh, that is
absolutely. And that tune became a minor hit in Italy, of all places. So you, as a composer, know that you'll look at your statement and go, "Oh,
Sweden."
Sweden, the Netherlands. So it was called "What Is It You Want," and that was just the
icing on the cake. Yeah, Martin's got a couple of songs on Qatar Airways that we get royalties from. So we managed a couple of years ago through our friend Cindy Robinson. She has a friend in London who does programs all the music channels for Emirates, Qatar, and one other, Swiss. And so we just submitted a bunch of music, and they picked a couple, and the pennies roll in. I mean, it's $50 here, $100 there. It's not what it used to be. But by the end of the year, that $10.99 adds up.
It sure does. And CMG, we own a small production library for those types.
So I wanted to ask you about that.
We do. We have about 10 volumes of production music that is available, and we have licensed to some television shows, to clients like you're speaking of.
Great.
As you say, the pennies, we'll take them all. Pennies make dollars.
What is it? Edie used to say, take care of the pennies.
Pennies and the pounds will take care of themselves.
Yeah. Yes. That's a really great, I'm going to remember that.
Yep, that's right. So, so as far as your working life, Ange had a question.
Yeah, as both a performer and a producer, how do you balance the creative energy of being on stage with the discipline of working behind the scenes in the studio?
Well, it's been a while, Angie, since I have been a performer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even play guitar on most of my records because what I find is that if I'm playing, I'm thinking about my playing.
Well, I don't know. I saw you shredding it good at the Village a week last Wednesday.
Well, nobody cared, you know, but it was.
I did.
Well, I mean, in the sense that if you're producing a record, and Niko and I, our great complementary skills is we're all about getting it before you're thinking about it. So Niko's always like, I'd rather have you in here. So I'll call Doug Pettibone or Ricky Z or one of these great guitar players that I can just walk up to, Val McCallum, say, you know, I need you to do something like this, but then not do it. I haven't really performed in a while. You know, performing is great, but I'm sure as every musician that comes on will tell you, the touring.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Never a fan of the road.
No.
And I admire people that can stay on the road.
Willie freaking Nelson.
Well, it's
blows me away.
You know, the Stones, Paul.
Oh,
I know Rusty Anderson is actually the guitar player on my friend Draco's Rock and Espanol record that I'm telling you about. I've known Rusty since before he got that gig, and he's had that gig for over 20 years now.
Yes, him and Brian, sure.
But, you know, it was never, first off, I was and am claustrophobic, so I didn't like the bunk. I'd sleep in the back lounge. I'd wait till everybody stopped watching the movie. And I prefer strategy than tactical. You know, gigging is tactical.
Yes.
You know, you're getting up there and you're defending your work.
Yes.
Night by night. I was SONIA DADA in the late mid-90s.
Your SONIA DADA days, you did a lot of that stuff.
Well, we opened for Traffic one summer, and as much fun as that was, and great to meet Steve and Jim.
Right.
You know, it's all right.
It's a lot of work. One of our old clients used to be the Nelson twins, Ricky's kids, Matthew and Gunnar. And when we were doing social media for them 4 or 5 years ago, they went through, oh my God, air delay after lost luggage, after they did a mini Europe tour and they lost the guitars and blah, blah, blah. I said, how do you stand it? And he said, because our dad, Ricky Nelson, taught us that you don't get paid to play music. You play for free. That 1.5 hours on stage is what you do for free because you love it. You get paid for the delays, the lost luggage, the crappy hotels, the shit breakfasts. That's what you get paid for.
That's actually a brilliant analogy of the job in a nutshell. That's the job.
And that was from Ricky Nelson, was taught that from Ozzie Nelson and his touring orchestra, who used to tour back in the 30s and 40s, and there weren't bunks. They slept sitting up in the bus.
Right, in your basic variety of a school bus.
In the Chitlin circuit and all of that. Right. Yeah. So you have to love what you do, and clearly you love just, you know, creating and producing and writing and bringing great music to the forefront. So what did you see? I have to ask you about KYUSS. What did you see in Josh and KYUSS that nobody else saw at the time? How come you got to sign them?
Well, a friend of mine invested in Chameleon Records in the late 80s. And
we got another little tech glitch. It'll come back. Zen it back. I don't know what's going on.
There we are. We're back.
We're back.
So I immediately, so then they offered me a job, and it was actually the first job I'd ever had. I made it all the way to 89 and on my wits. And I went into this job. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea. So I looked around at the staff, and up at the front desk was this really cute purple-haired Doc Martin wearing young lady named Cecily. And Cecily was just, so I went up, hey, Cess, what should I do? And she goes, well, you know, there's a band called Nirvana, but you won't get them. Oh. And she had known them from when they were on Sub Pop. And
sure.
This was mid '89, so they had probably just signed their deal.
Oh my goodness! You won't get it.
And they didn't.
Well, we did not. And she said, but there's this band called Sons of KYUSS, and I said, okay. So I went to their show, and one thing I learned from one of the brilliant people that I work for, a guy named Bob Buziak, he'd go, you know, when you're doing this, you have to separate your own personal taste from what could work.
What you think the customer will buy.
Yeah.
If you go into a gig and there's 5,000 kids jumping up and down and you think it's terrible, rethink your position.
Guess what? You're wrong.
You are. So KYUSS was playing in Hollywood at a place called Raji's, which is no longer there.
What?
And they were a bunch of teenagers that were, you know, and a guitar is tuned to E. They were down a fourth. They were tuning to B, and it was at 18 years old. And they, but I went to see them, and I was immediately impressed with their just full-on commitment. They were committed. And I brought my publisher, a really wonderful lady named Tammy Lester, and Tammy at the time was really into extreme, and she was a publisher. So she was into songs. And I remember Tammy standing in the back of the room with her arms crossed, kind of scowling. And she goes, Resnik, I hate this shit. And I'm like, well, Tammy, you know what? That's all the more reason I probably should sign it. Because it was not her thing. And they were living it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's
living it.
And it's not only what the sound is for kids, it's the community, it's the lifestyle, it's the commitment, it's the, you know, I mean, I don't think Bob Dylan is the greatest singer ever minted, but I think he's
finally somebody said it.
No, but he's one of the greatest artists because he's committed to telling his own stories in his own voice. He doesn't have to have 3.5 octaves and sound like Pavarotti.
Bob still sells through. My son, who's 22, when he was 4, and he would scroll through at the time my iPod.
Yes.
He stumbled across Blowing in the Wind.
And
it changed his life. It changed his life. He, you know, then when we'd be driving around, he'd come back to it. And, you know, sitting in our little home studio, I came in here a few weeks ago and they were all blasting Positively 4th Street because at one point I told him, I said, this is one of the meanest songs ever written.
Yeah. But I think bands like KYUSS and Dylan and artists like Neil Young, they don't have to fit into a box. You buy their commitment and their backbone, and you want to be part of a community that you feel like somebody's telling you something where you feel like you belong. Right?
Well, 100%, because we've sort of, you know, when you see one of the reasons why, in my belief, that music has become a lot more disposable is because it's written by committee and you know, you're sort of pandering on some level. You have tools that can fix everything, the pitch and the time. And there is, you know, with Neil was never going to change who he was.
Nope.
You come with him, forget it. The great, the Allman Brothers, these bands were going to do what they wanted, and if you don't like it, well, great, we're good.
Yeah, go buy a K-pop record. That's fine.
Yeah, and we've lost some of that because the music became a business. I feel lucky to be at, in my mid-boomer life, to know that, when I hang out with the kids, I'm like, you don't know what Tower Records was. It was great.
In my day.
Cranky old dude. Yeah, right. I'm the cranky old woman. I get you.
Well, there was just something about the fact that there was a moment from the Beatles till the early 80s where you could just find something new all the time.
Yeah.
It was great. I remember hearing Johnny Winter on the radio when I was like 16, and me and my buddy hitchhiking across town to go buy that album because we were like, and obviously there's still a ton of great artists as I learned, Sharon Van Etten, for example. Sharon she has not compromised her integrity. Courtney, Brandy, lucky us that the younger artists are still themselves.
Right. Well, there's a kid I was telling you the other day from Memphis, Nick Black. I want you to take a look at. He's very poppy musicy, but the messages are so deep, and he's found a way to speak to his generation through the music they listen to. But it's all still the same storytelling, and that in itself is a trick. You don't have to be a folk singer or a blues singer. I think there's a whole new generation of these kids coming up who are saying, well, if I want to spread my message, I need it to be not only in the voice that I like, but the music I grew up on and the music I like to hear and my generation likes to hear. So I think we're starting to see a shift with people like, Courtney that you're mentioning. Mary Cutter is another one, a country girl. She's just unbelievable. But, I think if we hang in there long enough, hopefully the pendulum will swing back the other way. And all of this, when I finally stopped recording years ago, they had just invented this thing called a Russian dragon. And I'm like, what's a Russian dragon? They're like, oh, well, it's for timing. I'm like, what do you mean? They said, oh, well, if your vocal is rushing or dragging, we can fix it into the beat of the track. So it was called a Russian dragon. I'm like, it's time for me to leave the music business. I'm done.
That would also be a somewhat underhanded description of certain drummers.
Yes, correct.
So if somebody called you the Russian dragon, you probably needed to practice a little more with the clip.
You were in your own pocket. Yes, exactly.
But Niko and I, one of our bonding moments, it's what we'll do next week. It's what we did with Chris Pierce when he recorded Southern Man. We'll get music charts together, but we don't rehearse. We hire people, we cast.
Right.
And then when I bring in Doug Pettibone, it's like, Doug, just play some cool stuff. Just something cool. You bring in Stella Mosgawa. Well, Stella plays, like an old soul. And what we like is we don't want you thinking. We want to get it before you start thinking. We want to tap into your life's long thing.
Right.
And young people are still doing that. I mean, we were talking the other night about the string revolution.
Janet and Marcus and Roberta.
It's the real deal.
Yeah, it's absolutely the real deal. Those guys are amazing.
It's real. So that still exists.
Yeah, it's out there.
Tell you what, I wanted to ask you, what advice would you give youngsters, young composers and producers that are coming into today's heavily saturated music world, especially those looking to build a multi-dimensional career like yours? What would you tell them? Where to start or what to look for?
Or what to avoid?
Well, avoid substance abuse.
Of course.
Avoid fair weather friends.
Yeah.
Try to figure out, here in Los Angeles, you'll know hundreds of people, but probably any one of us can count 10 people that we could call with a flat tire in the valley.
Yeah.
Yep.
And,
flat tire in the valley. Yeah.
And then be yourself. What I'm seeing with young people that are succeeding, and it doesn't matter whether I like it or not.
Yeah.
You know, there's this kid, Benson Boone, the kid that does backflips. Okay, it's not really my thing, but I thoroughly enjoy it.
Oh, yeah.
This kid is exactly himself.
Yep.
And to try to avoid compromising. And then my final point would be, and then learn to be the equivalent of an endurance runner.
Yes.
Because you first have to know you'll have what it takes, and then you got to get your lucky break. Yep. And sometimes that takes a minute. It still happens.
Yep.
But, you know, one of the things that I'm sure you both know is that in a town like Hollywood, a lot of people have a misguided assessment of their abilities.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Very nicely put.
You mean overblown ego?
Well, you know, just because you're the best looking young lady from, you know, Broken Arrow, Oklahoma,
right,
does not mean that you're going to go and compete with some of these brilliant young actresses that are out there.
Just living their craft.
Yeah. So I think that, you know, you see a lot of times is that people don't really have a great assessment of who they are. But, you know, there's a way to build a career nowadays that you could have a whole career and maybe not make a fortune, but make enough to make a great living. And you guys may never hear of them.
Yep, that's true.
You know, there's new opportunities, and you don't know. You know, we didn't need Warner Brothers. We didn't need them.
Yep. Well,
so there's
absolutely. Yeah. And I've always been about fan base. We built something called iFans back in 1998 because when I was growing up making pocket money by sorting Beatle fan mail on our dining room table in Liverpool, John Lennon would occasionally come up and stay for the weekend to get out of the smoke. And his greatest joy after bacon and eggs on a Sunday was he would come and sit underneath the dining table with me and go through these banker's boxes of letters from Japan and Australia and New Zealand, whatever. And he'd lift the letters out and look at the stamps and go, oh, the customers are all over the world. He never called them fans. He used to call them customers. And he said to me, you know, I was about 7. And he'd be like, you know, if there was only a way to poll these customers, if we could write back to every customer and say, well, how do you like our hair? What should we wear? Where should we tour? Where are we? You know, you listen to the last LP. What should be the next thing we send to radio? What should be the next single? You know, and so that's where fast forward. I know also how important the customers are. And one of the things that makes me sad about the young artists is they're investing all of their time into social media, and the only person that owns the permission to write to that fan's name, address, city, state, email, zip code, and send an SMS text is Mark Zuckerberg. A lot of these kids don't know who their fans are. They don't have a spreadsheet.
No, and they don't. I think there's a misguided theory that a cute little TikTok video will create a real fan, and you both know, and I'm sure listeners know that that's just not the case.
It's bots a lot of times. Yeah, I know it's absolute nonsense. Well, where can people learn more about Cinema Music Group and the Volume 1 Heart of Gold album benefiting the Bridge School?
Well, you can go to our website, which I believe you've linked to us, and thank you for that.
Yep.
cinemamusicgroup.com. And also the Killphonic, KILLPHONIC Records. They have a website of which you can order the physical product if you'd like it, or you can find it. The streams are available in all the streaming services. So if you typed in Heart of Gold, you would see it come up in Spotify and Apple Music and Tidal.
Fantastic.
Good.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. You probably don't know this, but our regular viewers on here and on YouTube and on McCartney.com will know that the Limerick lady here, she has one of her 7 books out, is called Mrs. McCartney's Liverpool Limericks and Other Random Irish Haikus. And so she always writes a limerick to thank our guests for coming. So, and look, they're going, woohoo, limerick time.
I'm seeing that as we're speaking. They've been waiting for this, Angie.
Yeah, exactly. It's the only reason they hung on. Yeah.
Right. They want to hear me.
Yeah. And I figured, I Googled and I learned so much from Ruth and Martin after last week. I thought maybe I'll go for 2 verses for you. So
yes, so you're
verse,
a very honored guest.
Yeah.
So
I'm ready.
are you sitting comfortably?
Yes.
Yes.
Then we'll begin. Jolly good. So a 1, 2, 3. Dave Resnik's a musical force with talent and vision, of course. From Mavis to Neil, his projects reveal a heart with its rhythm at source. For Heart of Gold, Dave took the lead with purpose, compassion, and speed. Each song pays its toll to uplift every soul and help bridge school children succeed. Ta-da!
Ta-da!
Oh, you're gonna make me cry. I'm sorry, I'm not. This virtual thing. I'm gonna give you a virtual hug, both of you. Giant hug.
Calm down.
Thank you. I'm flattered. I'm flattered.
I'll email it to you so you can print it out and stick it in a drawer. And Sammy, I must mention, who's watching from Atlanta, you mentioned Johnny Winter. She runs McCartney's oldest client since 30 years now is Edgar Winter, Johnny's brother. And Sammy runs Edgar's whole online world and was part of the whole team with Ross and Kerry and us working the Brother Johnny album, which garnered Edgar his first Grammy, believe it or not. So maybe she's bringing some good voodoo in the house.
Well, they're doing a new one, I believe.
Yes, Edgar's in the studio with Ross at the moment. Yeah. Awesome. Can't wait. All right, Dave, fantastic. Thank you so much. We will be in touch on other things, and make sure you go to Killphonic Records website, and it's a beautiful daisy white vinyl limited edition. If they're not already sold out, grab one, because they probably are sold out, but you never know. They might do another run of purple or yellow or something. We
will, and I will leave everyone with, you can always go to the Bridge School's website and make a small donation. Small donations matter as much as big.
And we know that the money actually goes to the bottom line, because they're not
in the middle. You donate $10, it's going straight to the school.
Yep, they're not some overblown organization. So it's a win-win-win for everybody. Well, thank you once again, Mr. Resnik, for your time. I know how busy you are, so we appreciate you spending so much time with us.
It was a gift.
And we will see you all of a sudden.
Yes.
Okay, kids.
Bye.
See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.